Hi everyone, my name is Young Chen, and we have Praveen Sharma. Today's T-Tech Go is on real estate enhancements. And our agenda today, we have it broken out to 3 parts: general enhancements, partial payment, and straight line enhancements, adjust payment enhancements, and then we'll have release notes and references. So for this video, we are only going to concentrate on partial payments and straight line enhancements. Praveen will walk through the straight line enhancement. I will walk through the partial payment. So let's get right into it. What we'll do is we'll give an overview of our non-monthly partial payments and then provide a small, quick demo of non-monthly partial payments. Praveen will go through the overview of non-monthly straight line and then a demo of the straight line. So our non-monthly partial payments frequencies are basically like location-specific, quarter, annually, semi-annual, and quarterly. In our last release, quarterly was already working with partial payments. Similarly to location-specific was working with partial payment, but it was using the first payment date, which we've now changed it to use period start date. And then annually and semi was not calculating at all with partial payments. So in the current application, user was still able to update partial manually on the payment schedule. They can fill out the date and the amount, calculated value amount already, and put it on the payment schedule. So our goal was to enhance non-monthly partial payments for these frequencies to work similarly to quarterly frequency in 10.4.2. And now in general payment schedule wizard, workflow will calculate the partials on the payment schedule. So location-specific, like I mentioned, for this new enhancement, we're going against period start date. Location-specific quarters also has English quarters and Scottish quarters, which these quarters have different start dates. So that's why we introduced the period start dates so that we will pre-populate it with the next quarter start date from the first payment schedule date. We'll go through an Excel sheet with scenario and use cases in our demo. And then also annually and semi-annually, like I mentioned, it never handled partial payments, and we'll go through our Excel sheet for the scenarios. So changes in the January payment schedule. For these frequencies, we all needed the period start date to calculate the partials. And then for those people who are familiar with our partial payments, the January payment schedule wizard had a calculation method, daily, monthly, daily, same as the pro rata basis. For location-specific, semi and annual, we both added a new pro rata basis for actual day basis. They used to only have 360 and 365. And then charge-based amounts is the same, and payment due on, you can set it as a specific day or first day or last day of the period. So let's get into the demo of the partial payments. Let me go into the app. So I've created some records ahead of time, just for time's sake. Let's go into location-specific. Actually, before I do this, let's look at the Excel sheet. So for our demo, our Excel sheet kind of drives our use cases and scenarios for us development and for QA to run through. So for this demo, Praveen and I have made this Excel sheet so that we could create one record that will run through the straight line also. So for our test case here in our Excel sheet, you can see our commencement date is February 15, 2013. Our lease expiration date is 3/24/2016. All these fields are kind of input fields into our application. So for this frequency, we're going to do location specific, traditional English, and then we have the first payment date is February 15, 2013, and our period start date is 3/25/2013 is basically the next period start. So this way it will calculate the partial first, which is why we introduced the period start. Pro rata is actual day basis. Our calculation method is daily per quarter, and then our amount per basis is 24,000. And then our due on is a specific day, number of schedules. So this schedule is going to be 3 payment schedules generated from the wizard and adjust every 12 months. And our growth is going to be 3,000. And then for a straight line, we'll use the accounting start date, accounting end date, and accounting standard and calendar. So for this scenario, what we're going to run through is a traditional English quarter. See, as you can see here, our English quarters, their start dates or their quarter dates are different. So they fall like the first quarter is December 24th, 5th. Next quarter, the next quarter is going to be 25th of March, 24th of June, September. So Scottish, same way, they're all fall in a different month and dates. And these are our real quarters. These are our payment line items. So as you can see, when we activate, the system will generate a first partial with these quarters with the amount. And this way, we can have a comparison between the Excel sheet and our app. So now let's go back into the app and replicate this scenario. So I'll move that aside. So let me start creating from generate payment schedule. So on generate payment schedule, we're going to set this as rent, and we're going to say this frequency is specific quarterly. And our this is going to be English, traditional English quarters, and our first start date is 2/15/2013. So as you can see, in our general enhancements video, we've introduced this period start date as read only, and it's populating the next quarter for us. And then in pro rata basis, you can see that we have actual day basis now as the default, which before it wasn't. And daily calculation method, daily per quarter, and then this is going to be 24,000. And then specific day of the period, we want it to be on the 1st. And number of schedule, we set 3. Adjust every 12 months. And our growth rate here per quarter will be fixed. We want it at 3,000. So here we are generating the schedules for the quarter. So we see the first payment schedule is going to have a first partial, and we have three payment schedules created. So let me just set this over so that we can see that it's the same as the Excel sheet side by side. 3, and it generated 3 payment schedules with those dates. Now let's create from the wizard. Okay. So now we should have 3 payment schedules created. And if we go into the first one, we'll see the partial get filled out. And we wanted to match the amount in our Excel sheet. So let me drag the Excel sheet over. So the first partial that it will create is this amount. So the expected amount is 10,133.33, and it's the exact same, 10,133.33. Okay. So let's activate this. While this is running, the system is creating the payment line items, and it will generate the first partial payment and then the rest of the quarterly schedules correctly. So while that is running, let's run the annual Excel sheet, and then we'll come back to it. So for the annual, similar thing. We have this Excel sheet to run through our use cases, but annually they'll only create a payment line item based on annually, and we'll have partial payments generated. So we have picked this scenario where we have partial payments 1 year, and similar idea how we did for location specific. So we have annual, we have first payment date, 7/6/2015, and our period start, we've made it visible. That's 8/1, we selected as it's editable and visible. We selected 8/1/2015, and our actual day basis is defaulted. But this time, our calculation method we're going to use here as monthly, daily, annually, so that we can check the amounts for monthly, daily. And then this one's per annual is 3,000, and we will run through this scenario. And so first payment due date, we'll select the first payment due period, and then 1 schedule and 12 months, and no growth here. So we'll see 2 partial first and partial last for this scenario. And then later I'll also do 1 scenario for Praveen for his straight line, where we don't do any partials, and run through that scenario. So let's go back to the record for location specific. It's still processing. So it's scheduled, which is good. Okay, amortization's checked. Still running through. Okay, so it's done. We see all the action. Now we want to make sure that our first partial and our payment line items are accurate. So let me bring that Excel sheet back out. So right now it's stating the total amount. First partial is 10,133.33, and our total amount is $334,133.33, and that matches our Excel sheet. Okay, so that is location-specific quarterly. Now let me go and create the annual. So I created a record first, and then let me go to payments. Okay, let me create one, let's say, for time being, admin fees. And this one we want partial first plus partial last, and then it's 1 year. So this will be annually. So annually and semi-annual, the logic is similar, just that semi-annual is 6 months, annually is going to be for a year. And then first payment date is to seven, sorry. 7/6/2015. And then our period starts 8/1/2015. And then it's going to be an actual day basis, and we're selecting monthly, daily, or annual, and this will be a $3,000 a year. Oops, what is it? Actual day. Okay, and we're going to select first day of the period. One schedule, adjusted every 12 months, and our growth rate is none, so we're going to generate a schedule. So there's going to be one schedule, but we want partial last. So I'm going to extend the end date on the schedule to 9/3/2016, so that we have a partial last. Okay, and we have payment instruction. Let's create this record. Refresh. So once it's created, let's take a look at the partials in the payment schedule. So as you can see, now generate payment schedule wizard, we're calculating partials. And also we have fields that are shown now for calculation method, pro rata, payment due on, and period start date. So you'll see for this payment schedule, we have partial first and partial last. And let me bring this Excel sheet over so we can see it side by side. And we did it as monthly, daily, and you'll see 213.70 cents, and then the other partial last is 274.66. So that's for our first partial and last partial, and then we'll create it afterwards, and then we'll see the payment line items get created. Let me save and close this. And let's go into this scenario where there's no partials. And so for straight line, Praveen will take this scenario to run. Let me add another one.
Thank you, Ian.
Oh, no problem. So annually, and then we want 2/15/13, and our period start is going to be the same since there's no partials. We're going to use actual day basis. We're going to have daily per annual, and this is going to be a $96,000 per year. And our due on is the 15th. And 3 schedules, adjust every 12 months, and we have a fixed growth rate of 12,000. Oops, strike 0. 12,000, and we're going to generate. So here are all the payment schedules that will get created. We'll leave alone, and we have a payment instruction. Let me create this. So we'll have 3 schedules. Okay, so let's activate this.
Before you activate, can you check accounting tab, please?
Sure. Sorry, Praveen.
No problem.
Accounting tab. You want me to put the start date and end date, right?
Right. That's correct. I think you got it right. Can you put the accounting standard to be FASB?
Yep. Accounting standard to be FASB.
And you can put lease classification. Yeah.
And lease classification, we want type A or type B?
Type B.
Type B, okay.
Yes. And FASB lease type, can you set to building and land, the middle option?
Yep. Building and land.
I think that should be good. Save and activate. Should be good.
Okay, Praveen, I didn't do it for location specific.
You didn't do. Oh, I can see.
You didn't select the accounting standard, gap, or lease accounting.
As long as you selected the calendar, I think it should be okay. But
oh, the calendar, I don't think I did.
Oh, okay, no problem. And
the calendar was this one, right? It was still pointing at standard.
Oh, 454. Okay. No problem. I'll probably start with recreate, but what we can do, yeah, activate.
Regenerate, right? Okay, let me activate this.
Yeah. I think I have to create a new one, but I can do that. That's not a problem.
Okay. So this will take a while. Can we change it? Let me see, this payment schedule.
No, that's the annual one.
Oh yeah, sorry. So that's processing. Let's go to location specific. Counting. So yeah, I didn't.
Those. No problem. Can you copy this record?
Yep.
I'll do it. Just give me the name. I'll take it from there.
So it'll be the copy of T-Tech demo.
Okay.
Okay, and let me see if it's still processing for the annual. So, okay, the payment schedules are getting scheduled. Payment line items are getting created. So this will take a little while to generate all of them. Building out the PLI. activated. Payments. Okay, so let's go into the partial first and partial last, and you'll see our PLIs will match our Excel sheet. So let me pull this over a little so you can see. So you will have 3 PLIs, partial first, 213.70, and then 3,000 for the next payment line item, and for partial last is 274.66. So that's about it for our partial payments. So now we're handling these non-monthly partial frequencies. So with that said, we can dive back into going through the process of straight line. So let Praveen share, and he will walk us through straight line. Praveen, you should have ability to share now.
I should. Give me 1 second. Can you see my screen?
Yep, I can.
Sure. Thank you, Young. Now, second part of this this feature is after the partial payment demo from Young. I will be demonstrating the straight line changes that we have done for location-specific quarters and annually and semi-annually. Let me quickly do the slide share first. And currently, we have in our product, currently we are focused only on making these changes for current accounting standard. We focus on straight line schedule, capital, and finance schedule, which is when we say straight line schedule, that means we are talking about an operating lease, and when we are talking about capital or finance lease, it's basically capital lease is something that is a US-driven FASB lease, and finance lease is something internationally they call it as IFRS, IASB, and FASB is FASB and GAAP. So we right now, as of current release of 10.4.2, we started supporting retail calendar, which is nothing but 4.5.4 calendar and 4.4.5 calendar, which basically is like a 13 weeks in a quarter, and it makes up about 52 weeks in a year. So some retail customers prefer to use 4.5.4, and some customers uses 4.4.5, and we have also had an option of giving a standard calendar. When you say standard calendar, it means that the month begins on the first of the month, the period begins on the first of the month and ends on the last day of the month. For example, January 1st to 31st would be one period, and February 1st to 28th would be one period if it's non-leap year. If it's a leap year, it becomes 29. So in up till 10.4.2, we supported retail calendar, standard calendar for monthly frequency and quarterly frequency. Starting in 10.5, the new release 10.5, now we also support location-specific quarters, and we support the annual frequency, and we support semi-annual frequency. A couple of things to keep in mind is we have some application settings that drives how the calculations are done on a straight line for the straight line schedule or capital schedule. Those two settings are net rent basis and a straight line calculation basis. And and it's starting on 10.4.2 onwards, we took an approach of calculating like since we are giving the option the user to use a net rent basis and straight line basis. Now we have to calculate like a monthly rate and a daily rate from the payment schedule. Just to bear in mind, this monthly rate, daily rate is different than the one that we calculate when we are generating this schedule. The options for net rent and straight line basis is 30-day basis. We usually refer to it as 30, and then actual day basis we call it as a daily. So basically, when we say net rent is a 30-day basis, we are taking the net amount of we are basically trying to put the monthly rate of a payment schedule into that fiscal period. When we say actual day basis, we are trying to count the number of days in that fiscal period times the daily rate that is defined on the payment schedule to generate that fiscal period amount. The option for straight line enhancement, whenever we are although we are just calling all these as a real estate enhancement, we make sure that the real estate and lease as well as the asset lease works together, works the same pattern. So there is a commonality between the two. I'm moving on to the next slide. Just bear in mind for location-specific order, we support any combination of net rent basis and straight line basis is supported. What does it mean? Basically, it means that you can run straight line schedule on a combination of a net rent equals to 30, straight line equals to 30, or net rent equals to 30, and straight line equals to actual day basis, or net rent equals to actual and straight line basis being 30, and net rent being actual, and straight line basis being actual. That we support. For annually and semi-annually frequency, we only support net rent as 30-day basis, and straight line can be a 30-day basis or a actual day basis. There is a known limitation that we wanted to make sure the user understands that as far as net rent basis of actual day basis for annual and semi-annually is not currently supported. The schedule might generate correctly, but we are not sure that it is calculated. So just be aware of this known limitation. The last bullet here is a net rent calculation enhancement for retail calendar, particularly in a retail sector when the frequency was monthly. We had some issues that in 10.4.2 where we were where the idea is that the number of payment, total amount of the payments should actually be matching the total net rent value. And I'll show you at the end of the demo. I'll show you this is also part of the demo that I would like to show. Make sure that the PLIs, payment line items that are generated when activation of the lease is exactly matches the net rent value of the straight line schedule, and that's a common rule around accounting. What will I be demoing on this one? I would like to make use of location-specific quarter partial schedule that Young created while demonstrating the partial payment. I would go on a 454 schedule with a 30 basis on a retail calendar. There could be various combinations. We could have come up with a lot of demos, so I just want to focus on so that it is at least we have one 454 demo goes on 30 basis, and then I have a straight line schedule for annually with a standard calendar on a 30 basis. Why I pick up 30 in both of these cases is reason is being we have observed most of our customer a daily option seems like a very less, and I have not seen any so far. So I'm sticking to 30 and more common accounting practice is to capture the accounting net rent value on a 30-day basis. The third bullet also explains about the amendment of a lease with a catch-up payment. That actually is basically for these two leases that I'm going to demonstrate. There will be an amendment to, and I'll show with a catch-up amount what it means while demonstrating it. And the fourth bullet, net rent calculation for retail for monthly frequency. There are two options. I would like to show both. One is a 30/30, another is 30 daily, because we had two different approaches or two different. We just want to make sure that two different things work for this scenario. So the net rent is 30 and straight line is daily. And I will, while I will show this demo, I will also be showing comparing calculations from the Excel sheet. And finally, we will also get into the different patch helpers that has been provided as a part of this 10.5 release. Most of them are common, but one of them is a exclusive, and it comes with a special string. So I'll come back to this patch helper back. Let me just go back into into my environment, and I do also plan to run through the Excel sheet for this. It might be a little shorter, so let me just make it a little bit higher. Zoom it a little bit more. How does this Excel sheet is? It's kind of a little bit complex, a lot of numbers, so it at times may be hard, but basically Young ran through this setup for me, but I think I have to run it again because the calendar was not set. So no worries, I can run that. So basically, I will be creating 3 payment schedules, which starts on 2/15/2013 and ends as per the design of location specific quarter. So period, it considers the period date into account and everything. And the values are 24,000, 27,000, and I will be concentrating on English quarter. But the same thing is applicable to Scottish quarter. So like Young has provided in the Excel sheet that English quarters, Scottish quarters, they have specific dates. They are not bound by when they start. Their first quarter starts on certain day and ends on certain day. And same is the case with the Scottish quarter. So typically, we usually in our standard quarters will be like a 30-day quarter, the 3 months quarter. But in English, it can run over, the days can run into 91 days, 92 days, 90 days, and 87 days. A typical typically that's how. In the center is a typical 454 fiscal calendar. As you can see, the fiscal calendar periods are defined. The start date is defined. This at the start of their business or whenever they usually set this calendar. But we use this as a mock-up calendar for us. But as you can see that you will see the blue color highlighting is that I have a 4-5-4 period. It means that I have 4 weeks in first 4 weeks, 5 weeks, and 4 weeks. Then I go 4 weeks, 5 weeks, and 4 weeks. It's basically all through the year. This is how they run. And the date starts on February. Generally, the retail calendar is a calendar that is used by retailers to catch up the Christmas sale, so that they actually start after the Christmas or end of the January. So they can actually find out the sales, all that sales that has happened. So holiday sales and all, they can actually account for it. As you can see that our year is long, about 365 days and a quarter day long. But since this is a calendar that we are specific, and if you add up the number of days in this calendar, it adds up to 364 days. So what happens is every 5.6 or I think close to 6 years, they insert 7 days into their calendar to make up for the last 6 or 7 days they have lost because our years are really 365 days, not 364. So they do that adjustment. But this calendar may have it or may not have it, but we can we can make use as a mock-up but some customers are particular and they give. I'll show you in the NetRent. The highlighted ones are just to I want to speak back on that one. On the right-hand side, you will see a straight line schedule. You see the accounting start date and end date, accounting start date and end date, like Young has put in this in his schedule. And then we are going to typically what we have observed or how the customers are using is they usually align the accounting start date and end date with the fiscal period. But in this case, we just took randomly one accounting start date and one accounting end date. And I think I did the accounting end date happens properly, I think. Oh, no, it doesn't. So no problem. So now, and then I'll come back to this this sheet. I'll refer back. So our end goal is that if you see line item 10, my PLI's total should be 334,133, and my net rent total should be 334,133, and that's our goal. Our second goal, making sure that our liability goes down to zero. All these things I'll demonstrate in a minute. So let's get into the into our system. What I did is I took the record. Young copied the record for me. So I took that record. I don't have to change since it is a copy of the record. Since I'm going to activate, I just made sure that my name is I'm the administrator, and whatever is required as a required field, commencement date, base, expiration, I filled it up, and contact details has the remit to look up. It's a for payment instruction, and payments. I didn't do anything. All when the record was being copied, it copied all the information. So if there was a partial on that record, it got copied over to the payment schedule. The key driver, when does the payment schedule gets picked up is when you check in the include in amortization schedule. So that's the key. If it's not checked, we don't pick up these payment schedule for correct. Okay. Let me go to the accounting settings. I have accounting start date and end date as 3/24/2016. I don't have any initial direct costs and all. I'm going to set the accounting standard to be FASB. And then accounting calendar, I want to show you the retail calendar. So I would pick up 454 fiscal calendar. And lease classification, these are for the new standards. But in general, leases are type B. I put that. And then building and land is the FASB treatment. This is the current accounting schedule that FASB treatment is it, and defaults to operating lease. So if it's an operating lease, we get a straight line schedule. If it is a capital lease, we get a capital schedule. If it's a finance lease, we get a finance schedule. So that's probably that's not in the purview of this demo. Before I get into this, I just want to go back to my settings just to make sure I explain there's something there. If you go back to application settings and you go to the lease accounting settings, at the bottom you will see two fields that is added, which I explained in the PowerPoint that net rent basis. Net rent basis has two options, 30-day basis and actual day basis. And then a straight line basis has a 30-day basis and actual day basis. For the sake of these demos, for location-specific quarter and for the annual demo, I will be setting these to be 30-day basis. So basically, what it means is that this is something they will not do on lease by lease basis. This is something the company does at one time before they getting into TRIRIGA. They know how are they doing their accounting. At times the option might seem too much, but then it's given for companies, like some companies might be doing daily, and they are now merging into a company that does 30/30, so kind of like that. But most of the time, I see net trend being 30, and straight line could be anything, 30 and daily. At least I've seen two examples. So that with that being said, let me go back to my lease, and and the other thing is if you see this accounting calendar on the lease accounting tab, when I create the lease, it always defaults to as standard calendar, which is present as default in the application settings. So user are required to change this one. With this setting in place and with the accounting start and end date in place, I'll go ahead and activate this lease. Okay, let me do that. Yang is clear, visible, right?
What's visible? Yes, it is visible.
Okay, thank you. My other part to this one is the TTUC annual demo. Yeah, before, yeah, I have a separate Excel sheet to show. While the activation for location-specific quarter is happening, and since it's what it does is basically behind the scenes, it does generate the schedules, it generates the PLIs, then it goes ahead and then does the calculation for the straight line schedule to be generated. Back to the annual schedule. Young created annual schedule for me with 3 annual payment starting in 2/15/2013, and it's a yearly annual with the amount of 96,000, and next amount being 108,000 and 120,000. So, and he has set the accounting start date and end date, and then the calendar to be standard calendar. Like I said, standard calendar is standard calendar begins on first of the month and ends on the last day of the month. So let me just dive into the Excel to show you some. So this highlight part is already being done and created. It's already there, and then just to show to refer back to for us to calculate and just to see if the values are correct. What type of calendar? So we say monthly calendar. Like I said, it starts on first, ends on one, and it could be 31 days, it could be 31 days, and this one is it should be 28 days, but for calculation we just put the number there and we forgot to change. And on the right side is you see the accounting start and end date, and the term that is being calculated, and in the straight line. Where the crux of the where we have to focus is, like I said, each year I'm going to pay certain amount, and then I'm going to, on a monthly basis, I'm actually going to divide that amount into my different fiscal period. That fiscal period could be 30-day or it could be a daily, but in this case we are using 30 days. So I mashed up the amount of PLI based on the payment date that was there, and then so as you can see, I paid 96,000 on certain date, but the rest of the time it is covered. But if you look at the net rent, you will notice that don't for just for a moment just concentrate on non-yellow things. So which we are saying that I'm going to I'm going to pay 8,000 per month, per month like that. And then when the new schedule starts, I'm going to pay 9,000. And then then the other schedule starts, I'm going to pay 10,000. Where is this coming from? I go back to my I go back to the schedule. Now, if I open the schedule, you will notice something like there is a whenever there is a rent type of payment type, there are two fields that are open, which is a rent daily rate and monthly rate, and this gets calculated after the leases are all the payment line items are generated, and the payment schedule is set to schedule status. So we calculate the daily rate and a monthly rate. So when we are using net rent equals to 30 days, we make use of monthly rate. When you are making use of actual day basis in a net rent, then we make use of daily rate for the net. So these two fields are actually driving that net rent column in the straight line schedule, and then so for this one, it was a $96,000 annual payment, and if you divide that by 12, you actually get a 8,000 per month. So that's the per month value of this one. And similarly, if I open up the another schedule, you will see that the total annual amount, because it's annual frequency, is 108,000. So it is per month is $9,000. 108,000 divided by 12. Some and the third one is 120,000 divided by 12. That leads to give me a $10,000 per month period. All these are affecting your net rent value. Now, the monthly rate sometimes can be different than directly 120 by 12 like that. Sometimes the payment schedule is not really in line, meaning suppose I have a payment schedule for annually, but it is actually the payment schedule start and then it points to like 9 months. So I get into a partial situation. In that case, we still keep it as 10,000 as being a monthly rate, but certain schedules that are longer than 1 or 2 to 3 years, and you have partials, then you are basically, when you calculate the monthly rate, we basically exclude the partials, and then we see what are the full payments and what are the full months that are lying between the start and the end date of the payment schedule. It's kind of tricky, but I think at the end it most of the time is monthly rate turns out to be the amount divided by the so if it is a quarterly schedule, it's 3. If it's 24,000 divided by 3, semi-annually it would be 48,000 divided by 6. So most of the time it turns out to be like it's divided by the frequency divided by the number of months in that frequency. Hope that is clear. So now I'll go ahead and check the accounting tab, and as you can notice, the first things that you want to be sure that your accounting schedule got generated correctly and there is no liability is to make sure that the amount of the total net rent of 324,000, that is the total rent, which is nothing but the same total rent here, and is the total of each of the period, is matching with the total payments that are actually going out. So if I just do rent, in this case, you will see that I have 3 payments and all of them are 324,000 adds up to be. So my accounting schedule is now matching up. And the other thing to see is that the liability is going down to 0. What is exactly the liability is basically when I have a when I have a net rent and a rent expense. The rent expense is nothing but it's like a straight line value, and it's a straight line value, and it's actually being calculated to be um, sorry, it's calculated per month basis, and I'll tell you how it's being calculated. And then the accrual is nothing but net rent minus the straight line on each line gives you the accrual, and the liability is like a what do you call it? It's adding 124 plus 0, and then you're adding minus 1172 to the next one. So it's adding this plus this gives you this, this plus this gives you this, this plus this gives you this, and at the end our goal is to get the liability down to 0. There is at the time of when this lease got activated, I think the straight line basis was set to daily or actual day basis. So let me just quickly check the settings. I think I did that settings to be, so it is 30-day basis. So let me go back and run a review assumption on them. And let me just quickly submit this. And then while that is happening, let me go back here into the annual, and I will show you first in Excel and then go back into the product. Now you see that I had a monthly rate of $8,000, but my accounting start date was starting on 2/15/2013, and my period that ends on 2/28/2013. So that means I cannot account for full 8,000 in this fiscal period, even for the reason that I only have to accommodate 14 days. 14 days of the amount. Okay. So no, sorry, I have to accommodate 16 days of the amount. Why it is 16 days? Because this net rent is based on 30-day basis. So if it's 2/15, even though it's a February month, ends on 28, we still consider that February month to be a 30-day month. So basically the monthly rate, which is nothing but 8,000 times the number of days in that fiscal period, divide by the 30 days, will actually give you this partial amount. The highlighted one is yellow. That's the reason why if it is 8,000, we may not get the value correctly. And similarly, if you notice another yellow highlight is there is a 2014 fiscal period. If I look at 2014 fiscal period, which is 02 here, it's actually going across from 2/1, that's 1st of February 2014 to 2/28. But in this situation, my payment schedule, there are two payment schedules that are coming into play in this case. So what I have to do in this case is consider the number of days of first payment schedule on the first monthly rate, and consider the part of the second payment schedule on a different monthly rate. So in this case, my monthly rate should be between 8,000 and 9,000. 9,000. So if you look at my calculations, it's 14. So in my first middle period, I have 14 days from the February that I need to consider for $8,000, and I have to consider next 16 days on the basis of $9,000. So this calculation is doing that, and it does. And while one thing I forgot is when an activation of a lease happens, we also calculate how much of the payment schedule value needs to be going in each of the fiscal period. So our that value is I'll just get into that. So this highlight yellow is one that goes across two payment schedule. Similarly, one more situation was there in a highlighted one was a yellow one. That also covered the part. The the that also came across two payment schedules. That's the reason the value lies between 9,000 and 10,000. And finally, the last value, if you look at it, this should have been highlighted yellow, is for 2016-02 period. And if I look at 2016 period, my accounting is ending on 214, which is nothing but 14 days. So I have to only accommodate 14 days of that 10,000 value that needs to go into this bucket. We cannot accommodate more. So it is 10,000 times the 10,000 times the 10,000 times the number of days in that period divided by 30 days, because we are using net rent. And as you can see, there is one important is when you see net rent basis is net rent column, you will notice that I have a straight line rent of 9,000. And how do I get this straight line rent of 9,000? Is I go after the term. The term is nothing but the exact number of months or difference between the accounting start and end date. So in this case, it is exactly, if you manually count, you get like 36 months that are between 2013 to 2016. So I get 36 months. And what I do with that accounting term is basically I take the 324 total rent, divide by 36, gives me the 9,000. That 9,000 is my straight line basis, and it's a straight line basis that is on a that's a straight line rent, which is nothing but rent. Now, if you look at the first period, as I said, it's a yellow highlighted. The rent expense the straight line should be 9,000, but this should be covering only the 16 days of that straight line rent. So now if I do the math here, it is taking into account the straight line 9,000 times the 16 days divided by 30 to give me this value. Why I have to use here is because I need to accommodate 16 days. I cannot accommodate 9,000. Otherwise, my rent expense goes up, which is very important field as far as accounting goes. This is the field that hits the profit and loss statement, balance sheets, and everything. So the accounting world is really focused on this one. And similarly, if you look at the last period, also has a partial, so that also calculates to be partial period. But in between the first and leave out the first and the last period, you will notice that all of them are 9,000. That's because all of them are 30 days, they are full periods, and we are just taking into the whole straight line account. And the accrual is again same, as I said, it's a difference between net rent to the rent expense. So and it goes down to 0. So let me see what's the condition of my lease. Now, as you can see, it was actually the setting was for actual day basis, but now I changed the setting and did a review assumption. It calculated to be the 4,800 and 9,000. And if I compare this, to the Excel sheet, I should be able to see the same result. So I have amount first of all, amount matches, which is 324 and 324 PLI, and then I have the values, net rent values 46, and the same values was also in TRIRIGA. And in TRIRIGA also considers the bumps in between the periods. So I have the highlighted ones, yellow one, and you can match up to the accrual value. You can match up to the liability value, and I can see that happening. So seems like the lease went in good. On the same, I probably can trigger this. There is a amendment case that I wanted to show. So let me get into that. And what I'm going to do in amendment case, the Excel sheet again, our Excel sheet is like our calculation. So this part from is basically saying how did I do the amendment part. Okay. So what I'm going to do when I do the amendment is basically I'm going to extend the term of the lease. So I'm going to go on the period. I'm going to basically on an annual day, I'm going to increase the rent to be 124,000, and I'm going to add a new payment schedule. It should be annual for 128,000, and our result should be in an accounting period, and everything I will change. And then the result should be, since I've already closed out the periods, it should not make any changes to the first green, but any catch-up should happen in the 11th period. Or today's case, it will actually happen in 12th period because 11th period is already closed. So let me run that by. So what I'm going to do, how do we do the amendment? You revise the lease and choose amendment. And you basically saying, I'm going to extend the lease. And I'm going to say amendment date to be, my amendment date to be 1/1/2015. When I click continue after entering the data, basically what is happening behind the scene is a copy of the lease is being made, and since we want to retain the fiscal line item history, those are also being copied into the history lease. So you can go back and refer. Why do we need a history lease? And this was very quick. I think the workflow instances makes it fast. If I go back to the history, I can still go back and check the history and see what was my accounting. Why do I need this? Because I started my amendment to be on 2015-01. 2015-01. I need to pick up this liability value, so I need to incorporate that into the current lease. So keep that in mind. I'll show you that in Excel sheet. So that's the history lease. Now I have the accounting. Now I'm going to make some adjustments to the to my payment schedule. So I'll go to the Payments tab, click on Adjust Payment, and I think I need to increase this. Just sure I get the numbers right. 215 to this one to 124,000. So I'm going to make that as 124,000. 124. What it is going to do is, since I have the payment have actually in the past, and I'll go ahead and process this. Okay. So it created a $4,000. Okay, yeah, it's created a catch-up of $4,000 for me. Okay, which is good. And I'm going to create a payment schedule of annually. This is since I'm extending the lease. And I'm going to put as 2/15/2016. And my period also starts, because I cannot change the period. And I'm going to make that for 128,000. One schedule, and I will just keep it for, let's do, I'll change this. And I want to end this on 06/30/2017. I think that's the number I'm looking for, 6/30/2017. 6/30/2017, and I have the numbers correct. 2017. Okay. I'll go ahead and create this schedule. So I have added a new schedule too, and its status is pending. And at this point, I would like to change this to be, since it's an amended lease, it's a new lease. Amended lease is considered as a new lease and ends on 6/30/2017. And typically, you would actually do the copy of the, you are actually commencing this, so you will actually do the copy here to be the original here, and then you will change the 2015 and now expiration to be 06/30/2017. So original commencement, original expiration is being, and state is the case with the accounting tab. Now after this, I activate the lease. So let's go back. I think I got the numbers right. Okay. Let's see what happens. This Excel sheet might be little off and compared to what the TRIRIGA, because when at the time I built this Excel sheet, it was 2015. That was a closed period by open period. But now since 11/30 is already gone, my open period is, so the values will be reflected here. But I think ultimately results should be good. I think it's better to wait for this annual one. Let's take a water. Oh, Young, can you approve this?
Sure.
Young is the administrator, so it went to him, so it will be approved. And once the approval, that's when the triggering happens.
Just approving it now.
Okay. It should go into processing soon. And my revision number has increased to 1 because I revised the lease with the amendment option. And it's processing. let it process and give a couple of minutes and come back to it. You'll start noticing that the values starting in 2015, 2002, and all, they have not changed. But look at the value at 2000, 2015-12. 2015-12 is my open period because 11:30, usually any period that are earlier to today's period is considered as a closed period. So the catch-up payment was applied here, and the rest of the amount was calculated. So now, if I go back to my payment schedule, you'll start noticing that my daily monthly rate has changed. Again, this has nothing to do with the monthly rate is based on, again, uh, start and end date is considered what are the full payments between those 2 days. And the second schedule, the one which was added, has a different monthly rate. So uh, and since the earlier schedule was not part of the amendment, the monthly rate didn't change, or we didn't touch of those anything. Only any payment schedules that are between accounting start and end dates are considered. My lease is activated. I show all the state action, and you will see that the liability comes down to 0, and my total amount is what happened? Is it still populating? Okay. Not sure what exactly happened there, but my total amount was 186,377. I started with a liability of 12,000 because just before the 01 it was 12,000, and I think there is some issue with this amendment. Something went bad here. I'm not sure. That's the reason why it calculated wrongly. And actually, this amount is not correct as well. But that's what I'll probably see what exactly is happening. I don't have the instances, but I'll see. But ultimately, our goal is to get down to 0, but also make sure the amounts are being filled up. I think either I made a mistake in oh, here it is. No, I did it right. Probably I have to run this, but it seems like some kind of issue, but that's that is something we can quickly fix by figuring out. But this is how the amendment piece of it works right now. Cool. And you can actually, I was hoping to, how many are there? Let me see. 30, and I got 30. 30, 30. I'm supposed to get a values like these. So, but no worries. I'll figure out something right. That's the issue there. So that's the amendment case. I think we can log a defect and fix that through. Now I'm going to go back to my location specific quarter. So if I probably it would have been done by now. and as they went, the payments would be scheduled. And again, in this case also, we calculate the monthly rate, all the three payment schedules, calculate the monthly rate, and monthly rate same. And then if I go to the accounting, before that, I just want to check what's the payment. So the total payment was 334,133 cents. An accounting tab also shows as 334,133.33. And as you can mm, and as you can see, the total amount is 334, and my daily value came out 334. I get a first day, there was a partial, but rest of the straight line was 9,030, all the way till end with a partial at the end. Yes, so the same value I get, and I get a liability down to zero. One thing is, especially in case of non-monthly frequency, is when we trigger the activation of the lease, we also calculate what is the amount that needs to be spread in the fiscal period. So if you look at the total spread is 106,133.33, because for that payment schedule, I need to spread this amount in the fiscal periods. And when I do the spread, we take into account first the full period take the full amount, and the next period takes the whatever is left over. Either as if there is a partial will be put in the first period. If there is leftover amount, that will be put. And the same goes at the last. If there is a partial, we'll put partial. Otherwise, it will be the leftover amount. Hope this is easy to follow, but so far I did two of the demo. I did two, and I covered the amendment part with I think I'll skip the amendment part for the location specific quarter. Now next I will get into the net rent calculation. I briefly also is covering the compare calculation from Excel sheet. So let me just jump into net rent calculation for monthly. This is something when we did release the 1042. Let me just switch off these Excel sheets and open the one I required. So when we did the net rent, when we did the net rent calculation, retail, when we got into retail had a problem where the net rent was not matching the total payment, and we applied the fix in the fix pack release as well as in the 10.5 release. We changed the design a little bit to handle that scenario. For sake of this demo, I actually created the leases first. I would get into I'm actually going to go into 454 3030 demo first, and then I get into the 445 30 daily. Basically, I have two monthly schedules starting on 7/1/2015, ending on 9/30. I already created them for amount of 12, 470, and 40. My accounting date, here the interesting fact is that typically what we have learned is that accounting dates usually coincides with the fiscal line item, fiscal period dates, and I'll show you where that's. And I use the calendar as Staples calendars, one that has actually a good calendar that we use. And please note that there is an initial liability carryover balance. What does it mean is basically if you are bringing leases into TRIRIGA from other system, and you are basically calculating this liability through some means for the other system, and you're plugging that number into TRIRIGA, so that from now forward, moving forward, the lease will be in TRIRIGA. This is a situation where you have leases that were like 10, 20 years lease that was done in 1990s, and then you don't want to input all the leases in TRIRIGA, activate them, and then get the liability and all. Instead, we gave them a feature where they can plug in the liability carryover, which is nothing but you can think of a amended lease, but it is on the inception we are basically finding out the liability value. So I have initial liability carryover value, and where the issues were coming, I will mention. So what I would do is I would my net rent is 30-day basis and straight line is 30-day basis. Calendar is set. All my values are set. I'll go ahead and activate this lease. Where the issue was coming was when this is the demo, and this is the my payment schedules that I just showed you with my accounting start date and 7/5/10. So if you notice that I'm starting at the accounting start date to be in line with my fiscal period. Typically, most of the time, 90% of the time, retail seems to be aligning their accounting start and end date with their fiscal period dates. So my 7/5 is my accounting start date, and my ending date is 10/3. So they usually align it at. And certain situation, we get into certain situation. For example, if you see period number highlighted in yellow, if you see this period number 2015-08, we got into a situation where there were two payment schedules. So we didn't know which amount to pick up from. So we used to either pick up from the least payment schedule or the highest payment schedule. At times it seemed to be correct. At times it seemed to go wrong. So, but we found out is in between a sweet spot. So what we actually do is, if we get into a situation where you see the calculation in column F and G, you will see that the accounting end is 8:30. Fiscal start is happening on 8:30, and I compare, and my fiscal end on that period is 10/3 for that period. But we find out what are the days for the first fiscal period that could be considered based on the fiscal period. So I basically compare 8:30 with the payment schedule end date, and then I also consider next payment schedule to be the payment schedule start date with the fiscal period end date to find out how many days can that fiscal period accommodate. Now, the condition is that if fiscal period accommodates if the first payment schedule can fit into the fiscal period more, then we take that fiscal period. Otherwise, we check if the second payment schedule has more than 3 days to accommodate, we take the full amount from full monthly rate. In this case, between the two of them, we took the first one with amount of 12,470, and that's the reason why we earlier in 10.4.2 release, TRIRIGA was putting 14,028, but after the change in the approach, we made it to put amount as 12,470, which is second. And I have some examples where in a 445 situation, it picked up the first payment schedule, which seemed incorrect. So if I go here and so the ultimate aim is again matching the net rent payment. Total net rent should be 8, whatever is my payment schedule. It should match this, and my straight line should always be straight, because these are typically full periods. And if you notice, we do have a term in case of retail. That term is really is defining how many periods are there. So if I start to count these, you will see that these are full periods. 63 periods are there, even though each period is less than 30 days, and one of them could be more than 35 days. Let's see what's the status of our, it's still processing. Oh, it's big. Should be done. Should be another 10-15 minutes and we should end this session, but I'll be getting into a patch helper soon. Hopefully this will run faster. To do this. Schedule now. It start to populate the values for the straight line. Let's give a few minutes, couple of minutes. A few other rules. I think I can get into the other example. Uh, Getting closer. I think I get net trend matching. Should be giving the lease back into, yes. So I have a lease. It my I do see that first three are correct, and my total rent matches with my 879102. What was actually earlier cases, what was happening was, if you look at my total rent, it was 87,102,69. My accounting term also accounting also matches the net rent payment. And then also it matches my straight line value, and it leaves a initial liability carryover of 5,825, which is acceptable as long as it is less than $1. Less than $1 is what typically acceptable. As I can see, it's actually less than $1, 5,824, but the sign is reversed. And then the liability is down to 0. If I compare that value information with the Excel sheet, I should be able to match the numbers. You can see I get the yellow highlighted ones as 12,470, and then all those values are I can compare them to be, and last one value being 166. I can see that. So that most of the time the retail was a issue because of the dates being different, weeks being different, and number of days in being different. So I'll get into the second demo. And before I do that second demo, I already created a lease to be ready. This should be I already created the lease. It's just a required values. All it's a simple lease with the yearly payment schedule with different values, 12,3, 12,863, some incrementing maybe every year it's incrementing by like $500, I believe it is like that. And I have accounting set to be 6/28/2014, and I have initial liability carryover balance of minus. Typically, for this case, I'm going to use 445. But in this scenario, I would like to show, in this case, so far in the case earlier, it was 30/30. But I would like to keep the net rent to be 30 days, but straight line to be actual day basis. So that's what the straight line is being calculated on a daily basis. So let me see. And I have I set the application settings. In middle of the lease, they won't change the application setting, but for sake of demo, I'm changing and then just testing it out. Initial liability carryover, this can be 0 if it's like a new lease, brand new lease. There are one example that is there in the Excel. I'm just going to show it in Excel, and then I'm going to start date and end date. So typically when you do the accounting start date, you basically are bringing your leases into TRIRIGA, and you find the first fiscal period where you're trying to bring it. So that's the reason why but it does coincide with the first period that is fiscal period for a 445 period. So let me go ahead and activate this lease. Still 2 more to process, 1 year, so it should be quick. Let me just go back to my Excel sheet you will notice that you will notice that highlighted yellow ones. This is a incorrect one. It has actually supposed to be picking up. I'll show you the example here. See, if in this case 9/27, line number 6. Now my fiscal period starts on 9/27/2015 and ends on 10/31. So if you look at this and compare this to the payment schedule that we have, let me highlight this and highlight this part. You can notice that 9/27, the end of the payment schedule is like comparing, it's like 4 days. But if you compare the start of the next payment schedule to the end of the fiscal period, there's like 31 days. But TRIRIGA was putting amount of 12,367 picking up from the first payment schedule. So these yellow highlighted ones is actually incorrect values. So the right values are, and the same was happening in so this is a situation in number 6 period, sixth period, that we came across 2 payment schedule in a fiscal period. So we have to decide which one to go with. And the same happened in 19, 18, and same happened in 30. And towards the end, it posted full amount, but in actual sense, it should have actually posted it's 9/29 is the fiscal period start, but if you look at my payment schedule, they end on 9/30. So in this case, it was only 1 day that needs to be considered for this period, and it should have actually put $0 here in order to get the matching rent. So I'll open up a sheet and show you the amounts. So this yellow one here is the correct amount, and you see here again it was picking up the previous, and now it was picking up the now it's correctly picking after we fixed the changes. The last period was it picking up full amount, and now it should have actually picked up 0 amount. That's what. So it's doing that, and the amount of the total rent should be 641,508. Sorry, 692,586. And I'll show you how it will be. So all of my payment schedules are scheduled. It has started to generate the values, and let's see 2015-19, did it pick up the right value? And if I go back and 2015-9, it picked up 12,860, which is what we are expecting it. I'll let it run for a couple of more minutes. And 692,586 is the total. That's the total that I got. Now, if I look at my payments, there are a lot more than, because my accounting started on 6/28. So let me export this file and open this one. And if I started on 6/28, so I think I can safely remove this. But if I take it down all the way, I should get a total of, I think I did a mistake. So I get a total of 692,586. I'm showing in the right hand corner, or right side down corner in the Excel sheet, 692,586.90 total. And that's what is the system generated. So our payment line items to total rent to net rent to total, they match. And in between, you can see 2017-18, 8. I think it is a middle period. So 2018, 2017, 8, 2017, 9, 2017, 9. Yeah, so it is originally it picked up 13,377. So let's compare that value here. It picked up the 14,708. That's and the last period, there was only 1 day to accommodate, and 1 day is a rule that we don't accommodate. So in essence, when we did the retail calendar, we found out that if 27 days fits into the period, we take the full amount. Don't do the partial of that payment schedule. We just take the full amount, monthly rate, and put it there. If it is less than 3 days, less than or equals to 3 days, the amount is $0. That's the rule we framed across 445 and 454. I think those are the two important demo that I wanted to show, and then again the liability goes down to 0. I get a liability of my 38,000. I do have another quick, but I just want to show it in Excel. I just have a starting at $0. So whether the carryover is there or not, the rules are the same. So this is an example just to make sure it's picking up the right value. So this Excel sheet is basically at the last, it is supposed to pick up 12/29/2019. It picked up $0, but in actual sense, it should actually be picking up and actually an amount there in order to match the value, because my period, the fiscal period actually starts on 12/29 and ends on 2/1, and I have about 31 days that I can accommodate, so it should actually be. So that's the one. That brings to the end of those demos that I wanted to run by you with straight line values, except the issue where I found on the annual one. Quickly, I wanted to get, I think I covered the, yep, yeah, and I just want to run one. The other thing is, as Young explained, we did a lot of changes to the generate payment form. So a lot of fields that were hidden for annual, semi-annual, location-specific quarter, we opened it up. So in order for existing customers so that they don't see incorrect data, so we had to provide patch helper. Patch helpers is a way for us to fix existing data of the customer prior to this release. So for the partials one, we had some patch helpers that set the current period start date. If suppose any customer would have created annual payment schedule in the prior releases, and they try to use it in a current release, it may give you saying that the required field is not filled up. So in order to accommodate, we give patch helpers. So 4 patch helpers are there to accommodate semi-annually, annually, location-specific, quarter, and quarterly. What they do is set the current period start date, calculation method, payment due date, and also some alignment of the field because of the metadata task that is behind the scene. So that those are the patch helpers that are needed, and they go by normal 10.5 patch helper string, no problem. And then the second bullet highlights is the set a start and end date of PLIs. For monthly and quarterly, monthly and quarterly, we did this. Oh, I think this is monthly and quarterly. We did it last release, but starting for this release, we set this start and end date for PLIs for semi-annually and annually. Why do we need this start and end date? Is to calculate the partial. These are strictly required for straight line. and they are not visible to the user, but they are required in our system, in our background in order to do the partial calculation. And finally, I have final patch helper workflow. That patch helper fix that actually starting in 10.4.2, the accrual amount on the straight line is calculated as net rent minus the straight line expense. But prior to 10.4.2 release, the customers were seeing the formula to be as straight line rent minus the net rent, so it was reversed. So in order to support those customers who are coming from 10.4.2 and who have leases in 10.4.2 and moving into 10.5 or 10.4.2 version, we wanted to give them a patch helper fix. So all we are doing in this patch helper is, this is a special patch helper. This needs to be run only if you have leases that are prior to 10.4.2. This is with a special string, 10.5 reverse accrued liability sign. All this patch helper does is it reverses the sign of the liability field. Like the description is there. It basically reverses the sign. It basically reverses the sign of two accrued liability field and likely liability field, which is nothing but, let me just show you. It basically goes and picks up all the payments, all the leases that are active and have history leases, and basically goes and reverses the sign for this liability on the history leases, so that next time you do run a review assumption or add a payment schedule and click activate, the signs will be picked up, the liability value will be picked up correctly, and it will automatically fix the sign for the accrual and the liability. So this patch helper needs to be run only once. Otherwise, if you run twice, it's likely that it will reverse that sign, which was originally supposed to be minus. It will make plus to minus. That brings to the end of this session. I think the patch helpers I discussed. I don't think anything else. Anything else, Yang?
Nope, I think that's it. So our next session will be adjust payment enhancement, which Praveen will go through in another video.
Oh, okay, sure. Thanks, Yang, and thanks, everybody.